It's hairy, and it's been hiding for centuries.
I could see a creature of sorts standing, looking back at me. It was a dark-shaped shadow.
But is the legend known as Bigfoot real?
I know they're real. Nobody can convince me differently.
Or is it a hoax?
I think the reported sightings are just the tip of the iceberg.
Could the facts be so provocative that even the government doesn't want you to know the truth?
If there's any sort of a concerted cover-up at higher levels, we simply don't know at this point.
There are those who believe in the existence of a book. A book that contains the most highly guarded secrets of the United States of America. A book whose very existence is known to only a select few. But if such a book exists, what would it contain? Secret locations? Secret programs? Secret experiments? Does there really exist America's Book of Secrets? In 2012, a consortium of Bigfoot researchers, engineers, and scientists announced the Falcon Project, a revolutionary new approach to finding Bigfoot. The Falcon Project is a high-tech aerial reconnaissance balloon that will take the search for Sasquatch 8,000 feet up into the sky.
The higher we're up, the better we can see straight down in between the trees. That's the whole purpose, is looking down in between the trees, trying to find these creatures in the heavy forest. It can hover, it can spin, it can do 45 miles an hour, it can stop on a dime. We don't even know how close we can get to these creatures.
The Falcon Project has commissioned an HD camera with secret night vision technology to capture evidence from afar. The airship will also be using CO2 detectors invented by the military to analyze the forest air for signs of life. But could the Falcon Project finally discover the truth about Bigfoot?
The Falcon Project really poses a real prospect at success. I mean, we've investigated so many other different ways of trying to get after this question, this challenge, and it literally is like searching for the proverbial moving needle in a haystack.
Today's technology is capable of doing this. We'll keep going. We won't stop.
According to Bigfoot researchers, there are approximately 200 reported sightings of Bigfoot each year. But they believe an even greater number of encounters go unreported, as many are afraid to come forward for fear of ridicule.
I think that the reported sightings are just the tip of the iceberg.
I thought if people saw Bigfoot, they would tell people. But I have now had many emails claiming I was the only person they'd ever told because they feared being crazy. And that's a very large sample size of emails. So it's clear there's a lot of people in the world who don't tell.
Dr. Jeff Meldrum is a professor of anthropology at Idaho State University and is a leading expert on foot locomotion in apes and hominids.
Now, I've familiarized myself with his report, and on every point that he took exception, it was some point of deviation from the expected morphology of a human trackway, and deviating in exactly the way I would predict given the distinctions of the Sasquatch foot. I don't doubt Mr. Hardin's skill as a man tracker, but when it came to evaluating Sasquatch tracks, he did not have the wherewithal to evaluate them accurately.
When Dr. Meldrum visited the site, he was stunned by what he discovered in the strange 15-inch footprints.
It really literally set me back on my heels. As I knelt down and I could see the remarkable detail, Even the ridge pattern on the sole of the foot preserved in some places. I could see the slippage and gripping of the toes, a very obvious toe animation. These were things that, given my background, my specialized training in the evolution of human bipedalism, literally jumped out. And as the realization set in, the hair literally stood up on the back of my neck. My gosh, this creature walked by here.
Dr. Meldrum determined that the tracks had not only been made by a living creature, but that they appeared to be those of an enormous bipedal ape.
We quickly made some casts showing the interaction of the foot with the soil, showing very dramatic evidence of a mid-tarsal break or mid-foot flexibility, which proved to be so significant in inferring a model of the distinctions of the anatomy of the Sasquatch foot. So it was a very impressive first exposure, and we were able to glean a lot of information from this extraordinary footprint find.
Could these strange footprints be the strongest evidence yet that Bigfoot really exists?
There is even a science now that you can name a species from its prints. There are plenty of fakes out there, but there are some that do seem to be real. And the ones that are real are very impressive.
Studying the foot structure further, Dr. Meldrum theorizes that without a mid-tarsal break, the creature would walk with a gliding motion, similar to that reported by eyewitnesses.
I see this very tall, dark-haired creature swiftly, quickly walking from one tree to the next tree.
One of the things that many eyewitnesses note when viewing a Sasquatch walking is the remarkable smoothness of their gait. They lack that characteristic bobbing of the head that is the result of us literally vaulting over a relatively stiff, extended leg.
It was a very fluid motion of the muscles. It was poetry in motion.
Fluid. I mean, when it walked up the side of the hill, I mean, it was just graceful. It was like nobody could do what it could do when it walked. And it didn't walk like an ape and didn't walk like a man. It was like more of in between, I guess you could say.
One of my closest colleagues, John Mayanzinski, is a wildlife consultant. He was working for the Fish and Game in the state of Wyoming, and his job was threatened because of his involvement in an investigation of footprints and an encounter. And so for 28 years, he was silent on the subject.
But if Bigfoot is proven to be real, what kind of creature is it? An animal? Or perhaps a human ancestor?
There are actually quite a number of interpretations of what Bigfoot may actually be. Personally, from my perspective as a physical anthropologist, I perceive this as an undiscovered species of a very large ape, possibly a pre-human ancestor.
People really are trying to work out what it is. They think either it's a large ape or they think it's some sort of a human creature. Sometimes people believe it's a primate mated with a human, so a hybrid between primates and humans.
Denisova, Siberia, 2010. Researchers unearth a finger bone from deep inside a cave. The DNA is analyzed and discovered to be a female from a member of the human evolutionary family previously unknown to modern man. They named the new primate Homo denisova and estimate that it roamed the Earth during the Stone Age, some 20,000 years ago.
This was really revolutionary because it told us that we could have populations of humans occurring in the same area, but that were different species. And so just from a finger bone, we could see that Neanderthals and another species were living side by side with modern humans.
What was also very fascinating is that the only other associated skeletal element was a molar tooth, which in its dimensions was considerably larger than any modern human or even Neanderthal tooth, which is exactly what we have proposed for the Sasquatch based on eyewitness descriptions of the facial proportions. The discovery of Denisova also was startling because it was so unexpected, and it came literally out of the blue.
Finding the Denisovan woman just shows us that just a tiny bone can yield a whole new species. And so it does give some optimism to finding Bigfoot, because all it might take is one tiny specimen and that can yield a whole new species.
I get a sense that the scientific community is somewhat warming up to the very real possibility that there are relic hominoids about. Homo floresiensis, or the hobbit from Indonesia. When that was discovered, it was quite interesting that the discoverers acknowledged that there were native traditions of such small, hairy people living up in the forest, and that in fact some European colonists had even reported encounters in recorded history.
Unlike Bigfoot being very big, the Homo floresiensis is very small. And so it does just go to show that it just takes finding one creature in one space and time, one serendipitous moment. And what the people who doubt finding Bigfoot say, we just need one skull, we just need one finger bone, we just need one specimen, and then I will believe. And that could happen.
Less than 15 feet in front of me was this huge man-like creature covered with hair. And I had a pretty good idea that this was about 800 pounds and about 8 feet tall. I didn't know what to think. I froze.
Well, I thought it was a bear in the beginning, until I got about 30 feet from the car. My heart was beating so hard that I could hear it in my ears. And actually, it was scary. Very strange. I mean, I know they're real. Nobody can convince me differently.